Obviously, we're not going to hit everything in terms of especially some of the smaller stuff or tweaks or fixes, but give you kind of an idea of the big things or some of the stuff that kind of has been finished since then. That's been around for a little bit longer, but got the final polish. So we're kind of going to run through this through the kind of core pillars of that we always do, kind of around authoring, assessment, and reporting. So in authoring, we're going to cover a couple of key areas around simple templates, activity builder, simple features, action builder, which is formerly known as workflow, hierarchy browsing, dynamic content. In terms of assessment, we're talking about things like paginated passages, file upload, the extension of shuffle options to new question types, response masking, changes there, touching slightly on LTI. And then in terms of our roadmap, just talking about a couple of things that will be coming out in the next couple of sprints that we can give you a quick preview of. So without further ado, let's launch into this and we can get started. The first key point we wanted to discuss through and show as new functionality is simple templates for an authoring experience. This is one that we've received a lot of interest over time about. It's one also at Educate. We had a lot of people asking around, how to do simpler authoring from a teacher or less skilled authoring staff point of view. So the idea here is that we've set out a standard set of simplified templates that feature fewer options than the default question templates. They're helpful for authors who don't need the full set of options to get started, teachers for whom they may suffer from paralysis of choice due to too many options there, or even kind of external or third-party vendor authors who you want to create simpler question types to speed up the creation process. Again, the idea here is that these are out-of-the-box options. You can still go and customize this as much as you want, but our aim here is to really take a little bit of heavy lifting out of this part as well. So let's take a look at this as a feature. In the links from the slide deck, there should be links to where you can recreate all of this as well yourselves. And as Saoirse said, if there's anything that you want to know or understand more about how to enable this kind of functionality, please just reach out to your support representatives as well. So this is the same question editor experience you get whether you're using the question editor on its own standalone, embedding the author API into your CMS, or using the author side as well. What you'll notice straight away, kind of compared with the out-of-the-box question editor, is that you only have one template per question type. So in previous cases, we've templated out the standard ones that we would expect. When it came to teacher authors, we decided to strip that back and make it a little bit clearer. If I go into a multiple choice question, for example, what you see here is a drastically shortened down set of options. So the ability to ask the stimulus or question piece here, the ability to set and add multiple possible responses, drag and drop them as you want, turn on shuffle options, turn on multiple responses, and set the correct answer. What we removed is pretty much everything that's in the more options section by default, and stripped it right down to the bare bones of what you need to create a basic question. You can also see this with, for instance, if we go into the match list question types ones, again, much simpler, much more reduced down options for scoring types as well, just to kind of reduce that level of mistakes or change or difficulty that can arise just from too many options. This is one that we really want to see out in people's hands as well, get a bit of feedback on where we've gone too far, where we haven't gone far enough, be able to take that in as constructive feedback as well. And just a reminder as well, as we go through this, if you do have any questions, just please use the GoToMeeting chat piece, and we'll make sure we hit them all at the end of this as well. So that should, the aim there is that should hopefully provide a lot of that piece that you could do already with the question editor, but required you to go and customize those templates yourselves. It's just that really stripped down version. Next up, we'll take a little bit of a look at the activity builder. Again, this is one there's been a lot of interest in over the years in terms of having an embeddable activity builder that you can drop into your product rather than having to go and build it from scratch each time. What this allows is users of the embedded APIs to create a new activity, choose items from a list, reorder them, remove them, set the reference, preview it, all of that kind of functionality. Let's take a look at how that looks in real life. So a lot of this is very similar to the item list and item edit view that you can get with the Author API currently. You have an out-of-the-box view of all the activities created in Learnosity to date. You can see high-level information on whether they have items or not. You can search them by tags, search by description, or you can either create through this UI or through this button, or you could jump straight into this screen as well. So you could have your own list in your product and then jump directly to the editor view. I can change the reference. I can go in and search for content here as well. So I can click Find Items. In the same way that you can search for content, or search for activities in the original list view and search for items, you can also do the same using tags or by content here. You're able to preview inline while you're searching, which is something that right now you wouldn't have been able to do. So we can do a quick preview, play around with the question, understand how it works. I can choose, let's say, these 3 or 4. I click Add Items. I can also do things like very easily rearrange multiple items within the assessment, and I can preview this as well. In this case, we're showing it just as a big list of all of those questions, one after the other. But the second phase of this will include preview within the assessment wrapper as well, so you get that full experience too. The next couple of phases of this for Learnosity as well are including a settings tab where you can go and set all of the things like reading time, total test time, change the UI preset that you're using, all those kind of things. But we really wanted to get this out here early so you guys can use it and start looking at it from an MVP point of view. Next up, in terms of authoring, the piece we want to touch on slightly here was simple features. Simple features is an extension of our feature functionality which we have at the moment, the ability to embed audio, calculators, protractors, rulers, but this was to bring it into an actual question. Previously there were separate chunks, they had to be displayed separately from the question. What we wanted was the ability to actually be able to embed audio into a question stem or a possible response or somewhere where you may really need it. Just to note that this feature is exclusively in Question Editor v3 and exclusively using the WYSI HTML editor rather than the CK editor. So if either of those don't apply to you guys right now and you really want to use this feature, please flag it with us, and we're more than happy to work with you guys to get you where you need to be able to use this functionality. So how does this look? Again, let me just click in here. I'll bring you through an example I built earlier actually, which is probably a bit more useful. So this is a multiple choice question that I've been building here. In the WYSI HTML editor, when I'm working away, I now have this button here, which is simple feature. What this means is that when I click into this, I have the option to directly inject into anywhere that button is, which is stimulus or possible responses that make sense. An audio player, a calculator button, a protractor, or a ruler anywhere that we need to. So for instance, that button itself will be right there. We're going to concentrate on audio because I think it's probably the most common one, but all those other functions are right there as well. So the idea here is that you can embed audio either as a button like this below, a bar player, minimal with play and audio controls, or the two that I think are probably most useful here are as text or as image. So the idea here being that you can have text or image displayed with audio behind it. So let's look at ones I've already created. This one here. So which of the following animals is mislabeled? Let's look into this and see how it's been created. So it's set as display as text, the text of which is which the following animals is mislabeled. The source URL is an audio file I generated of a computer-generated voice reading that text. You have controls to be able to hide the visual controls or hide this play icon here. You can have playback limits. Basically, have whatever you need there. So let's take a look at how that looks in real life. You can see it over here, and I'm just going to move the mic so you can make sure to hear the audio as well.
Which of the following animals is mislabeled?
So as you can see, that would be really useful for either younger grades or for language learning elements within this. And equally, we have these images set up to play as well. So I can click on this, and you should be able to hear.
Le chat, le canard, le lapin.
So it really brings that audio functionality deep into the question, and it means you can really target those younger grades, either where literacy levels will inevitably be lower, or in language learning where you really want to not give away the context, or you want to give hints on the pronunciation of words and that kind of thing as well. So we think that's going to be really valuable. It's in every stimulus. And it's in terms of possible responses, it's in a lot of them. There are a couple where to date it doesn't really make sense, so we haven't put it in there, but there's wide coverage there for you to use. And as mentioned, in this case, you can turn off the play button. You can turn off these audio controls as you want. The next piece that kind of stacks on top of that and really becomes valuable as well is the action builder. This was formerly known in the author site as workflow. We kind of figured that Action Builder really better describes what it actually is. And essentially this is the idea that you can build up rules for when a student first sees an item in an assessment, what should happen. This includes things like auto-playing of audio and video, auto-recording of audio if you have audio question types in there, the ability to disable navigation, ability to disable the student from interacting with the question, and those kind of events that make it really powerful. This is only available to use the author site currently. It's an author site piece of functionality. So let's take a look at that and how that really works. So let's look at the question type we're looking at here, and we're going to go into Advanced and to Action Builder right here. So we're going to start adding some actions. We'll click Add, and we're going to say on item load. The first thing we want to happen is the fact that we're going to go and disable the question. The student shouldn't be able to interact with it when the item first loads. We're then going to say that on item load, we want audio start playing. So this is the audio file I uploaded earlier. Let's just check it to make sure it's the right one. Yep. And we will click play. Next, we could do numerous things here. I'll keep it relatively simple, but you could chain it that it will read the first one and then each of the options after it, and then enable the question. In this case, just for demo purposes, I'm just going to do disable the question, read the audio, on audio finish. Playback is complete. We're going to say re-enable the widget. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I'm going to now click View and Assess API, which is the preview step. So the idea here is that because this is around when somebody first sees a question and exactly what happens, it needs to be in the assessment wrapper for all that kind of functionality to take place, for us to know that they've moved on to that question. So this preview step here will do it.
Which of the following animals is Miss Mabel?
I think I had my disable rule set up slightly incorrectly there, but as you can see, the moment you start into it, the label is automatically read, and the student gets that information immediately. Okay, so the next one as well is one called hierarchy browsing. This is an addition to the item list view. And the idea here is to kind of solve a bit of a problem around discovery of content that we've seen knocking around for a while. Within the item list view or activity list view or those kind of things, we have all of the tag searching functionality. One of the small problems though that presents itself there is that you kind of inherently need to know a little bit about the tags to be able to search the tags. You need to know that subject is a tag so you can start typing and discover based off subject. What this instead does is add an extra piece of display that kind of drives users down a more constructed path to be able to search content. It kind of makes more sense when we show it. So let's take a look at that now. So if we look in this item list view, we can see that we have tags and by content, which are always there. We now have this category one here. So if I click to expand this, you have hierarchy. So generally these are the most common ones we'd see here would be subject, grade, standard, substandard, or those stepped pieces. But you could have multiple sets of standards. The common thing here might be that you have tagged your content in such a manner that you have general Common Core state standards, you then have Florida Sunshine State standards, you have Oklahoma specific ones, or Texas TEAC standards, those kind of things. And you could have multiple hierarchies that address each of those. In this case, we just have this one set up. In subject, I can see all of the tags that have content under the subject tag. So you will have set up a subject tag type. There will be these tag values underneath it, and each of these has content. So let's choose math for a second here. What we then see, let's see, has math got a substandard? Let's try and find one with a substandard. Here we go. So underneath this, we then give a list of standards that are applicable. So the idea is that we're filtering down, we're looking at content that is subject ELA, and then we're looking at the standard tags that are against that content. And we know that only these 4 have content as well. So I can select these and filter down another step as needed too. One other option here as well is you can add a couple of tag filters that are always there. So they're not part of the hierarchy, but you always want to filter by Bloom's taxonomy or by depth of knowledge. And it gives kind of a really powerful, more targeted search structure where people can discover what's there rather than having to kind of know it a little bit. This is one that definitely, it's worth a bit of a chat if this interests you with whoever your support representative is, just as to first off how to enable it, but also how to best structure tags to really get the best use out of it as well. Next up is dynamic content, which is a great little feature that we kind of want to show a little bit more of as well, just to kind of raise exposure of it. The idea here is the ability to write a question once but have multiple variants of it really easily. So creating a case whereby you can really easily import multiple different variables from a spreadsheet or CSV, have those plugged into a question, build a huge number of variants of a single question, saves time in terms of content creation, allows you to grow your amount of content very quickly, discourages cheating because multiple students will get a question that is the same difficulty level, the same standard, but they can't just look over their shoulder at the student next to them and see their screen. And it's really, really, really easy to use in Author. Primarily, the original focus of it was kind of towards math, but we've expanded that a little bit. So it's now available in question types like MCQ, math, sort list, order list, and a couple of those as well. So let's just take a quick look at this. It's actually one of those options you need to. It's not enabled by default. We have been thinking of changing that just in terms of visibility of new features as they come on board. But if you don't see this either in your own Author API implementation or in the Author site and you want to make use of it, again, just ping us and we're more than happy to walk you through turning it on. It's very, very easy. So let's go and create a new item. One of the things you'll see up here is this new data button. So let's click into that. I'm going to create a data set just by hand. But the idea here is that you might use a spreadsheet and some simple formula values, or have an external party just create possible variables for this. But it makes it very easy to get started. So let's say variable 1, variable 2, and answer. We're going to make this a very simple addition question. So we'll say 2, 3, and 5. We'll say 31 and 23 is 54. We'll say 27 and 3 is 30. We'll just start off with those 3 to begin. Click continue. You can go in and you can check the kind of data that's in here at any given time. And let's go and create a new math question because I think it shows it off best. We'll go close math. So let's start off with add the 2 numbers below. And we're going to delete all this. And we'll start by adding in our variables. So I'll say variable 1 plus variable 2 equal to response. And I'm going to go into my response first one here. And let's go with the equiv value and add in the answer. So let's test that out now when we look here. So we can see first off that there's these new buttons here, which allow me to cycle through the different variants of it. So I can see 2 plus 3, 31 plus 23, 27 plus 3. Let's test this out. So 30, 54, 5. So really, really easy to to essentially boost the amount of content that you have, or kind of step around that kind of cheating concern without having to build variants of tests, or go and duplicate an item 2 or 3 times over, build it into a variant form, and then have some logic on your side to go and give students those different forms. So we'll start into a little bit a few of the assessment piece of functionality that we've added recently as well. The first one is Paginated Passages. So this is essentially an addition to the shared passage feature to give a paginated experience to going through content. At the moment, this kind of standard approach, if you have overly long content, is scrolling. What we started to find was that there were states where specific standards specified exactly how somebody should experience passages like this. So to be able to tick the box on doing that, or on providing that kind of functionality, and making sure that anybody who was operating in those states could properly serve that, we created this expanded feature. So again, let's take a quick look here, and we're going to go in, and I'm going to create a new item. So let's start off. It's likely to be an ELA item, so we're going to say it's 50-50 left-right columns, and in the left column I'm going to go and add a feature here. So I'll click into the passage section. Under more options, I'm going to enable paginated content, and we're going to just put in 3 pages to start. So let's take my text sample here. So we'll start with a bit of Moby Dick. Always a classic. So start with that as the heading. We'll take this first paragraph, nice big long one, as page 1. We will take these second 2 paragraphs as page 2. And last but not least, we'll take these 2 paragraphs for page 3. And as you can see, you have the full editor as you would anywhere else, so you can obviously do all the markup you need, images, anything like that. So let's click Save. Very quickly in the preview here on the left, you can see what it looks like. I'll add a couple of multiple choice questions on the right just for effect. It's an EBSR one, I've decided, so we'll add 2 multiple choice questions in here. And now let's flick to preview and take a look. So now I have this much more paginated experience for a student to go through content. Kind of solves a lot of that problem of excessive scrolling, especially when you get into ELA content for older grades, you get into long passages. Kind of gives that more structured look and feel to it as well. So again, just an option. You can use that, or you can use scrolling behavior as you may need. LTI then, just as one to touch on briefly. It's obviously one that comes up for pretty much anybody who's in the education industry working with K-12 schools or districts. One area that we started taking a look at probably about 6 months ago or thereabouts. So there's 2 main areas that Learnosity play in here. One is that we do have an out-of-the-box LTI tool provider, which means it's a very, very simple way to get a test from Learnosity into an LMS, along with grades passed back into the LMS gradebook. Now, this, as I mentioned, it's quite simple in terms of what it does. It's mostly around that point where you just want to be able to get a test, whether that's fixed form or item adaptive or whatever, into Learnosity. The other kind of larger route that we see people quite commonly going down as well is where you want to essentially have your own tool provider, which has more than just Learnosity stuff. It has your own content or your own experience elsewhere. We've also designed that grade passback bit so that you can leverage that in your tool provider and just simplify your own LTI integration a little bit. And then the third part as well is we do have some partners who specialize in LTI integrations, or helping clients build out LTI integration. So if that's an area where you have an interest, but it's it's a struggle to know where to start or how to get where you need to be, just reach out to your support representative or business development staff that you've dealt with, and we'd be more than happy to put you in touch. Next is actually a new question type, file upload. The idea here is to give you students the ability to upload files from their device for manual scoring. So this is an interesting one for us. It's a little bit of a move away from question types being purely assessment into kind of a little bit of that assignment and work offline kind of flow. So really suitable for projects or assignments or other work that's not necessarily done directly in front of directly in a test. Very suitable for practical stuff that can be difficult to formulate tests or to formulate question content that really tests it well. And currently this covers JPEG, GIFs, PNGs, and PDFs. I'm sure the obvious question that comes to mind for some of you guys is things like Microsoft Office and areas like that. That's in the works. It's the main thing is we want to put in place some very, very robust antivirus scanning on files first, because obviously we don't want to become a conduit for malicious content being pushed into schools via a student uploading something with a virus or a teacher putting a file up there with a virus. So we definitely want to support that in the future. We just need to get a couple of things in place first before we provide that. So how does that look? Let's take a look at a file upload question type here. Really simple, exact same authoring experience as any of the other question types. I, as a teacher, can go and ask the question I want to, or as an author, I can ask the question I want to ask, choose the file types I'll accept, choose how many files you want them to upload max, up to a maximum of 12, all the kind of standard stuff, being able to put a score against it if you want and need to, any metadata that's of use. And the student experience then will be really simple and easy to use. So in this case, because it's just a preview, you can't really interact with it hugely, but if you click upload files, you get a dialog to choose the files on your system. Upload is then handled, and then in teacher mode, you would open this in review, and they'd be able to pull and open those files and take a look at them and be able to do manual scoring against them as well. Shuffle up options in choice matrix. This one I won't go in and demo, but it's more so just an expansion of functionality we've had in multiple choice for a while, which is the ability just to click a box and have the options automatically shuffle for each different student. So to kind of prevent again kind of levels of copying or that kind of stuff. So that's now available in choice matrix. We are kind of expanding that over time just to question types where it makes sense. There's a few where it doesn't necessarily, but we'll be growing that over time. Response masking is one we've had for a little while, but we just put a bit of an update around the kind of UI and experience for this. Masking is a visual way for students to mark or reduce down the number of options that they're looking at in front of them. Can be very, very important from an accessibility point of view, or to remove distractions for students with dyslexia or reading difficulties, to let them concentrate on just what's important to them at the time. Disabled by default, but it's really, really easy to turn on, both either via elements in the assessment wrapper, or else kind of programmatically that you can choose to turn on that mode if you have some switch on your side you want to have it powered by. So let's take a look at this. So in this example, I think we have this loading off the. It's in the drop-down menu here under Answer Eliminator, but you can place it as an element wherever you want using regions. So let's take a look at this from an example here. So I can click and have these elements grayed out and be able to filter through the ones I don't want to see for a while, and very easily kind of strip that down. It's also designed in such a way that the CSS and the styling for how this appears can be changed relatively easily. So we went with this as a really, really strong default version, but I also know that when it comes to test prep, especially for certain standardized tests, they can do it in a very particular way. So if you want to try and copy that, it's quite easy to do too. So we'll move on to the roadmap. So the idea here is we want to show just a couple of things that are coming in realistically the next 2 sprints. So Learnosity operates on 3-week sprint model. So most of these should be released by the end of August. And a couple of features that we think would be really beneficial. And you know, after back to school dies down a little bit, it'd be great to talk with some of you and see where some of these may be useful. So first one's a bit of an enhancement to group reports. I believe we've shown group reports to a lot of you before in terms of the layouts or the ability to generate asynchronously large-scale group reporting, and to have essentially table generated with things like average score, percentile values, all of those kind of things. What we're bringing out in this is actually something that we showed at one of the testing conferences previously in a presentation, and I think we also showed it at Educate before, and promised that it would be coming soon. So the idea here is, instead of kind of giving just the pure raw information, to give something visual that actually really tells you something at a quick glance. So let's take a look at this. The idea here is that rather than just giving those raw numbers, what we're giving is box plots of 25th percentile, 75th percentile, and average. So you can really easily see something more informational about where each of these groups lie. So at this level, this is district. But if I click into Southern Schools, I can see the schools in the Southern Schools district and how each of those performed. I can see easily whether they fell inside or out of the 25th to 75th percentile of the region. If I click in again, I can really easily see this at a class level. And if I click in again, I can very easily see all of that information at a region, school, class, and student cohort level. And it gives me something out of the box that's really, really informative, and simplifies that side of showing and making this information useful to school or district administrators. This gives them instant information around their classroom, around their schools and their classrooms and their regions, without having to go and really dive into to understand every piece of information around the values that are generated. The next one is item analysis. I know this has been one that a number of you have been really, really wanting for quite some time. So end of August, this will be the first drop of item analysis functionality. This covers a wide range of things, and that'll be growing. The information we provide will be growing over time. But the simple ones we target to begin with are elements like p-value and discrimination. So how this will work is it'll be a job that you can request from Learnosity. So it's a data API process to go and generate a report for a certain amount of content, potentially between certain periods of time, and be able to generate a spreadsheet or CSV file that gives you a lot of that information. So be able to look at per item reference, in case we have multiple questions in an item, how many times they've been attempted, the p-value, or basically the overall percentage that got this right, standard deviation within that, and then discrimination, which I'm sure lots of you know what it is already, but for anybody who doesn't, it's simply kind of a measure of how indicative of performance this item is. For example, if I got this question right, how likely am I to do well in the test overall? So a item with a high discrimination index is a very good indicator of overall performance. So that'll be step one. We are looking at kind of areas like point by serial and those kind of sections as kind of next stages for this, but these will be the first ones that are coming out. And lastly is just a piece around paper-based assessment, which I know is one that comes up pretty often. There's a couple of things here. One is that Learnosity we provided new endpoints which allow you to push in content that was taken outside of Learnosity into us for reporting purposes. But probably the biggest thing here is a partnership with PaperScorer. So the hard part of offline testing and that kind of thing is how to print it, how to make it accessible, how to ingest it back in at the end. So PaperScorer provides solutions that make it really easy to generate bubble sheets, assess students on paper, scan or email those back in, And then subsequently the kind of the follow-on part in the loop back into Learnosity there is the ability to push that information back into Learnosity easily, so that a teacher could review that in the same way as they could a session that a student took in front of a computer online, and really kind of create that end-to-end experience. So that's one that's in the works at the moment. It's coming. The idea will be you'll have the option to partner with PaperScore if that's an area that you want to use. And if it's an area that you're interested in, please again reach out to your support representative or else the business development person who you work with most closely. So that's kind of a rough roundup of features and some stuff that's still to come, but coming very, very soon over the last 2 to 3 months. I hope that's been really informative, and I'll hand it back over to Saoirse.
Thanks, Neil. So just to finish up, we just have one question from one of our attendees. So Kent has asked, can you have different titles or headings for different passages on Paginated Passages? So I'll leave that with you, Neil.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's kind of a case whereby on the different pages there would be a different header. So right now we assume that passage is all the one passage and that it's pages of that. For that functionality, the tabbing piece within the item would probably be best. So rather than using the Paginated Passages piece for that, we would use. Let me just look for this. We would look at using, for instance, multiple tabs on the left-hand side and having a separate passage in that second tab with descriptive names that would allow students to find them easily. So we assume that this is all one logical passage rather than a grouping of passages together.
Okay, that makes sense. I hope that answers your question, Kent. That's all for questions. As I mentioned before, if anyone has anything else that they'd like to follow up with in greater detail, you might want to contact your technical or business development contact. But that's all for today, and thank you so much for everyone for joining, and I hope that we will all see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.